I'm Walt Thiessen, the Crypto Skeptic. Let's talk crypto. And I am joined today for first time by my Wednesday co-host, Jody Lynn Craven. She and I were talking about this whole Crypto Skeptic segment that I've been doing the last few weeks and was interested in it. So, Jody, thank you for joining us. Your first visit here on Crypto Skeptic. This is great.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you. And we also have our special guest joining us today. His name is Richard Archer. And this is an interesting connection that we made with Richard, because I actually made a connection to an associate of his in his company, and his associate passed him along to me. So we got like the top dog in the company. That's a pretty good trade right there. You can't really go bad with that trade. That's a good trade.
What's really interesting, she's our senior planner, Emily, and she just finished her CDAA exam, which I finished a few months ago. And she's getting a lot of interest in the podcast world because she has a female perspective, like Jody Lynn from financial planning. And so she's in high demand. So she has more podcast interviews than she can possibly handle right now.
Ah, yes. I can understand that. Considering how many I do each week, I totally get it. Yeah, that can kind of be overwhelming after a while. But we thank you for taking the time to join us today. And as we were kind of talking before we got started here and dealing with technological issues, we all kind of realized we're all kind of skeptics here. Mm-hmm. I mean, and you made reference to something interesting, Richard. You said you're kind of, some things you like, some things you're skeptical about. I'm very much the same way. For me, the part that I'm skeptical about is crypto as a currency. The part that I'm excited about is crypto as data storage. I think that's really fascinating what's going on in that area. But I'm going to go, before I even go down my road, I'm going to go down your road first. So tell us a little bit about, first of all, about yourself, about your company, and what's your take on the whole situation with crypto?
Yeah, I'm happy to. So it's really an exciting space for us. So if you'd asked me this a year ago, I had clients calling me, asking me, I've got some money at Coinbase. I'm like, oh, Bitcoin, I don't know. It's too risky. It's, venture capital. It's, illiquid, whatever. And then I had a client call me, a new client call me from New York, maybe November of last year. And he said, I'll call him John. John, he said, hey, Richard, I need some help. I'm like, what do you need help? He's like, look, I've got $3 million in cryptocurrencies, and that's all of my net worth, and I've borrowed against my house, borrowed against my credit cards. I sold my car. He said, and I manage it full time, and I need to diversify. And this is before the market fall, right? I need to diversify. And I quickly realized I did not know enough to help him. So we focus on working with tech professionals, kind of mid-career tech professionals across the country, mostly in Central Austin where we are. And so there's a lot of knowledge of the blockchain and Bitcoin and cryptocurrency space already, so they were familiar with it. And what was funny is as I started to learn about the space and just started to broach it with clients, all of a sudden I realized a lot of them weren't telling me that they had it. They were ashamed of it. They're hiding it. And all of a sudden just this floodgate opened with conversations and opinions. Wow. And they wanted, hey, what do you think about Polygon? What do you think about this? I'm trying this new token that, ICO just launched, and like, wow, all this energy. So I was like, I really need to get up to speed quickly. So I got my CDAA, which is a certified digital asset advisor, just as kind of a baseline to know what's going on, and then started digging into Masari, and reading cases. And I just got back from the DACFP conference here in Austin and Consensus a few weeks ago, and I'm just trying to learn as much as I can so that I can be useful.
That's good. I'm glad. And I especially like the part where you say, I don't know anything about this. I got to learn about it.
Yeah, it was all market demand. And, what's interesting for me is that, as I started learning about it, everyone who really puts the time in has their aha moment, right? Like, oh, I see what this is. I see where this can go. And then your wheels start to turn. And that's the people who are like the maximalists, whatever token they are, Bitcoin, Ethereum, whatever. They kind of see where it's going to go. And I appreciate that too. One of the things that really kind of, when the shoe dropped for me was, my dad's an engineer, big time engineer. And he always used to tell me when I was a kid that if you can't explain something in 10 words or less, you don't understand it.
Ooh, I like that rule.
Yeah. It's good though, right? So I came down to, so what is this stuff? Well, it's software, right? It's just software that eliminates the middleman or makes financial transactions or data storage more efficient and cheaper, faster and cheaper, right? That's all it is, right? So when you look at it that way and you start looking at the applications, then it becomes a little bit less scary. And so, you guys ever watch Bankless, the YouTube channel Bankless?
I do not. No.
No.
Okay. It's a very good podcast on YouTube, and they've interviewed Mark Cuban a few times over the last year. They just did another interview with him last week, and he's really knee deep in this space. And one thing that he's bringing to the table that I really found attractive, that I've been talking to my clients about, is the idea of utility, right? So you've got all these tokens, and it's not just about this doesn't go anywhere until this becomes useful. It becomes useful easily, both to businesses and individuals, but primarily businesses. That's where I think most of the money is going to come from in the future, is when, the Western Unions of the world realize that, sending money that way is not very efficient, right? That's the old example everybody uses. Or title companies are the ones I would like to use with clients. What about title companies? Here in Texas, title fees are incredibly expensive, thousands and thousands of dollars. And you can buy a house on Friday and sell it again on Monday, and you have to pay title fees twice. It's a whole search. It's silliness. So it's a perfect application for the blockchain. So when clients who are always selling houses, real estate's a full contact sport here. They deeply understand that, and that jives with them when they understand, so you can make title companies go away with blockchain. I'm like, yeah, exactly. It goes away. And they're like, oh, that makes sense to me. Or medical records for my older clients. I love that too. Controlling your medical records on your phone and deciding who you want to have them, and not having to call one doctor to fax it to another doctor, which is what they still do here. So.
Wow. I want to talk about the medical records in a moment. But first, Jody, let me go to you, and let's talk about what your perspective has been on crypto and the whole blockchain thing.
I think the technology is brilliant. And exactly like Richard was just saying, even like titles or whatever, our titles in Canada, that's where I am, are, through the registry. You have to go to the registry and change things. But right now, as it stands, I think it's like 6 or 8 weeks, maybe even longer than that, to actually get your title in your name after everything has closed. And that's insane. So thinking about blockchain in relation to how it could do some of those things, is brilliant in my opinion, and also dangerous. And I don't know if we actually want to go into that conversation, because there's been this huge wave of, digital dollar. And that's kind of how I started researching crypto, and I was interested in the digital dollar. What does that mean? What kind of controls could the government have on our behalf that, may be good or may be bad? I don't know. All of these things. And then, going into this deep dive of crypto. So I have a general understanding of how it works. And, my issues really come up when it comes to it actually being a currency. So that's kind of where I sit right now, is just on the fence, watching both sides, and, just kind of watching the whole action here. Yeah.
So, that's an interesting thing. I had this exact conversation with a client the other day, and kind of where the conversation fell out was, the technology is still nascent, right? There is going to be a stable coin that everybody kind of adopts as kind of an easy on-ramp, off-ramp out of, maybe more volatile investments in the space. There has to be something, a money market, if you will, for the crypto that everyone's going to accept, and that is going to, stay on its peg, if you will. It's not going to slip. So that I think will get solved. I think it has to get solved. So then that is actually a currency. Currency is just anything that two people can trade, they find equal value in, right? So, yeah. I think that's inevitable, and that's probably table stakes for this even to go anywhere in the next year. I think, one or two of the stable coins are going to have to, take over market share. An interesting angle on that also came up in the conversation was, and actually Mark Cuban brought this up the other day, is that, whenever you have the tide pull out and when you find all the bodies, right? And we're seeing different tokens fail and blockchains not do so well, right? I think that, you're going to see mergers and acquisitions in the space. And I think Solana just had one yesterday. I read in the news. So I think we're going to see some mergers, and we're going to see some consolidation, at least in the short term, as a response to some tokens and some chains that have some utility but aren't strong enough to make it. What do you think about that, Walt?
I appreciate a lot of what's been going on. I've actually been aware since Bitcoin first came out of the whole thing. I was philosophically a libertarian at the time, so that's why I became aware of the whole thing. And because that's the circle it came out of. I had concerns about it then. My concerns have never changed. If anything, they've gotten bigger since it first came out. And, I actually don't have the confidence you have that there's going to be one that it all consolidates down to. And there are a number of reasons why I have a lot of concern about that. Number one on my list is the fact that, and this is, I think, a fact beyond dispute, there is so much speculation in this market. So much speculation.
Too much.
Trillions of dollars worth of speculation. And when, as is inevitably going to happen, when the vast majority of them lose their shirts, that's going to leave a stain on the whole cryptocurrency market that I don't think it's ever going to shake.
I mean, is that happening now potentially? It could be happening right now.
Oh, sure. Well, it's hard to tell exactly what the time frame is going to be. I think we can all pretty much agree that what used to be 18,000 cryptocurrencies, I'm not sure what it's down to at this point. Maybe it's only 15,000 for all I know. Of those 15,000, 14,997 will not be currencies.
Right.
Which means all the money that's invested in those is going to disappear into nothingness. And that's the kind of story that works its way into the culture in ways that we can't even see in advance. We just know it's going to happen because anytime people get hurt financially, it gets woven into the tales that people tell within family circles and friend circles and so forth. And this is happening. I've had people here on this special segment, the Crypto Skeptic segment, who have advocated the idea that, well, there was a meltdown in 2000 with the .com crash, and there have been other things. There have been other times, there was like with the U.S. automakers, there was a consolidation there. I say, yeah, but this is not the same kind of a deal at all. This is a very, very different deal because we're not talking about guys working in their garage trying to create a new car. We're not talking about guys in a garage trying to create a new software program. We're talking about literally millions, tens of millions of people who are going to get shafted from their viewpoint when all this is said and done. It is really not on the same scale at all. So that's my number one concern. My secondary concern is that a lot of the promises that were made, now these were made within libertarian circles, so there's a caveat here, but a lot of the promises that were made about it were lies. We were lied to by the people who were pushing it. We were told that this is going to create privacy.
I know. Yeah.
Which is absolute nonsense. And it was nonsense then and it's nonsense now. We were told that this was going to never be taken over by the government. That's also nonsense.
No.
And there's a number of things that were promised that were simply not true. We were also told that it was perfectly secure and that no one would ever lose their money. Well, we already have proof that's not true. So the original formulation, that has already fallen apart, in my opinion. Now that's within a very small circle. We're talking a very, very tiny chunk of the population. But when I look at a project that started it that way and was supposed to become the next currency, and here we are, let's see, we're in 2022. That was 2008. So it's 14 years later. We are no closer to it being a currency now than we were then. The people who advocate for it, who promote it, say, yes, we are, but they can't show me the evidence of it. There is really no solid evidence to show that it is anywhere close to becoming accepted as a currency.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And then there's one other thing I want to throw in here. To make matters worse, one of the biggest pieces of the whole Bitcoin thing was that Bitcoin was supposed to be a currency of limited supply, and still is, but I'll give it credit for that. It is still a currency of limited supply. To the best of my knowledge, none of the others are. And the whole reason for that was to prevent inflation.
Yeah.
So basically, what are we left with for what cryptocurrency is going to solve from the original set of problems that were being solved? None of them are being solved.
Nope.
So I ask myself, well, if you have something that has a legacy of not solving the problems it was promised to solve, and a legacy of massive numbers of people getting hurt financially, and the stories that go along with that, where exactly does this start getting taken over as an accepted, globally adopted currency? Because I don't see that happen.
Yeah, I think that I'm not as extreme as you. I'm a little more optimistic. I think I think some of these tokens, Bitcoin will stick around. I think Ethereum's got usefulness. Obviously, will it be used by the everyday person to go and buy a coffee at Starbucks? Probably not. At least not in the next 5 years. That seems a little fast. For me, what's more interesting though is the investment thesis that this is creative destruction happening. And this software and the tokens that come along with it, it's how you make money. It's like the stock of each blockchain, right? This software is going to destroy inefficiencies in industries across the world, right? Mm-hmm. So that's my investment thesis. It is venture capital for sure. Are most of the tokens we're looking at today going to be out of business in 5 years? Maybe. It's entirely possible, right? Some of them are going to make it though, and others will come along as well. And they're going to make money, but I'm mostly chimping at the bit now, waiting for business adoption of tokens. I mean, IBM has its own intra-company blockchain. I just forgot the name of it as I'm bringing it up. They have their own blockchain internally, and they've been working on blockchain technology for 10 years, right? So they're way ahead of most companies, and they're probably going to end up selling blockchains to other companies as a consulting service where they're intra-company blockchains, so they're not worried about all this mess with hackers and others, right? So there's the technology's not going anywhere. So when I'm investing for it with clients, to me, the tokens are kind of the flash over here on the side, kind of the exciting parts that jump around. We also invest in the companies that are building up the blockchain and the stocks that are actually listed stocks. And that to me may have the greater long-term growth than these tokens on the side, but we do both because I don't know.
Oh, I certainly agree that I think what you're describing is the non-currency side,
right?
The NFT side. And right. I totally agree. The non-currency side has all kinds of promise. Mm-hmm. And it's hard to tell exactly what's going to shake out of it. But I think it's fair to say there's enough good, useful stuff in the concept of a blockchain that can be applied in a wide range of human applications that, yes, that part is going to survive. The crypto skeptic was basically set up to address the currency side. Yeah. The idea of it becoming a currency. And the reason I think this is important is there is a tendency to blur this boundary. There is a definite boundary between currency and other forms. And I can't tell you how many times I've gotten the response, yes, but I think what's going to make it all work is the non-currency side. Yeah, but we're talking about currency here. What are we talking about? Are we talking about the NFT or are we talking about currency? Which is it? They're two separate topics, I think.
Yeah. On the currency side, I think that people are used to using Cash App or Venmo or PayPal or even airline miles. It's all digital. You've heard all this before, right? It's all digital money, digital sure. value. Once these user interfaces get easy as PayPal, get easy as Venmo. I mean, Coinbase is working on it, right? They're, being consumer facing. Gemini is working on it. So, I don't think people are really going to care if like you're on eBay and somebody wants to be paid in ETH versus US dollars and you've got either and it's just as easy. I don't think people ultimately care which one they're sending. So they could absolutely be currencies. It's just a matter of ease of use because right now cryptocurrencies are not easy to use. They're not easy to buy. They're not easy to sell. They're not easy to track. You got wallets and, it's not smooth yet. It's not as smooth as a PayPal or Venmo.
Mm-hmm. No, it's not. And I think it's important to remember that PayPal and Venmo are not currencies.
Right. Exactly. They're using US dollar, but PayPal and Venmo are going to add digital currencies if they haven't already. Maybe I just saw that. They're adding digital currencies to their platforms, making that so if you could send Bitcoin to buy something on eBay just as easily as $1 using Venmo or PayPal, wouldn't you just do that if you had it? I mean,
if you had it, yeah. The question is whether or not somebody's going to actually choose to have it,
right?
Because that is a deliberate choice. It's not something that like, oh, well, my boss decided to pay me in crypto rather than dollars, so I guess, I'll accept crypto. I don't see that kind of conversation happening a lot. I see the conversation more like, what are you paying me this other stuff for? I expect to be paid in dollars.
Well, you're right, but it depends on which generation you're talking about. When I'm talking to my 20-somethings in tech, this is a seamless non-issue for them.
Oh, the tech people have held that for the longest time, yeah.
Yeah, so I think maybe our generation is a little bit less.
But tech is only a small piece of the younger generation.
This is true. Mm-hmm. This is true. So you're right. I mean, right now, betting against it becoming a currency seems to be the winner's bet, but I'm a little more optimistic.
Okay, well, that's fair enough. Jody, where are you sitting on this?
I'm sitting maybe in the middle of the two of you.
It gets crowded here in the center. You know that?
Well, the questions that come up in my mind, and like, I'm not an expert. I've just done my own research, but the questions that come up in my own mind, as you guys are talking about this is the first question is the government.
Yeah.
Is the government going to allow these types of things to happen? And I say that in like quotations. I don't know how much they can limit. I mean, we've seen them limit a lot of different industries or a lot of different things in the past, but it's hard for me to believe that, you know, the United States government or any other government around the world is going to be happy when, you know, a majority of their citizens start pivoting to a currency that is not theirs. How are they going to feel about it? And what are they going to do in the background so that that doesn't happen? I don't know. But that's one of the red flags that comes up for me. And I can't see it becoming a currency because of what you were talking about. You know, Bitcoin has a limited amount, and that the whole purpose was to stop inflation and stop being able to, you know, spend outrageously, like, you know, like we've really seen over the last 2 years for sure. But many years previous to that, we saw government overspending and all of this stuff, just printing money. So Bitcoin and those kinds of cryptocurrency was supposed to stop that, or that's what I thought it was supposed to do. And then all these other cryptocurrencies are not doing that. So it's the same. So that's where the confusion in my mind is, and which leads me back to your point. Well, I don't think it's going to happen. One, because it's not going to solve the problem, but two, are the governments around the world actually going to let it happen, or are they going to do something else that they want?
Yeah, Jillian, I love this topic. Go ahead, Walt. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say more precisely the central banks, not just the governments.
Well, yeah.
And they're the ones who are actually doing the research right now. They're the ones creating their own version of a dollar blockchain or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting. These conferences I went to here in Austin a couple of weeks ago, that was one of the main themes was regulation, both from, you know, is it going to legitimize the whole blockchain and cryptocurrency space, right? And also, you know, I think that the consensus was that, you know, to me, government regulation is an investment thesis for us because one, I think that the cow's kind of out of the barn on this whole thing, and I think the government is going to regulate it. I don't think they can shut it down, frankly. I think that we'll end up with a U.S. dollar coin controlled by the government at some point, where they maintain control. I also think that we'll get a spot ETF for Bitcoin and other currencies soon, and I'm specifically investing in funds right now that if that happens, will make a nice little pop when they get marked to market. And I also think that until we get regulation, which I think we absolutely will get, and it's probably going to start this year. Everyone says it's 18 months out. I think we're going to see it sooner than that. I really do. I think starting in July, we'll start to hear things from the government regarding, you know, they'll turn down Greystone again and Grayscale again, everybody else, but then there's going to be more verbiage around it this time, is my opinion. And when that happens and we get some regulation, we get some structure, then the institutional money comes in, because greed is greed. And until then, the institutional money is staying far, far away because they don't want to get sued. So we have a first mover advantage, but we also have a first mover risk too. So I've got almost all of my clients in my firm invested in crypto in one way or another, blockchain, crypto, tokens, funds. And with the thesis that we're just small and nimble and we can beat the big institutional clients in there and make a whole lot of money when they follow in behind us. Fingers crossed. If I'm wrong, we haven't invested a massive amount of anyone's portfolio to where we're going to blow anybody up. That would be irresponsible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can't remember. I think it was, is it Ecuador? What's the country that has already adopted it?
Yeah.
Is it Ecuador? Yeah. And there was just the big, over the last 6 months or so, the big crash in all the cryptocurrencies. And I don't remember if it was the president or if it was their treasurer equivalent. I'm not sure what the names of the titles are there, but the guy who was like the lead within the Ecuadorian government, made the comment that, well, yeah, there has been this big drop, but it only amounts to 5% of our GDP. And I could just imagine Ecuador say, 5% of our GDP? Are you kidding?
Yeah, that's a lot, actually. I think one of your other guests actually made the point that, Ecuador saved, I think he said $400 million in Western Union kind of type fees from money remittances from other countries back to Ecuador just by switching to Bitcoin and to, and using other currencies other transfer methods other than Western Union and banks. Mm. So I can see why it was so popular there, but it was actually made me really sad because I liked the case of Bitcoin as a store of value in digital gold. I thought that was great. There's a different asset class. It's diversified and it's non-correlated to stocks and bonds and all those things. And when it all fell together, I'm not going to lie to you, it made me really sad to watch because that whole thesis kind of went out the door.
It's quite possible, I think, and here I am going to be taking the non-crypto skeptic side. It's quite possible at some point that this could evolve into some variation on a cryptocurrency.
I hope it does.
It's quite possible that happens at some point. I don't really see it happening with any of the current currencies. Now, I can't say that I know them all. I haven't studied them all. Just from what I've read about them, I haven't seen enough to say, yeah, there's one that's jumping up in my face and saying it's going to be stable. It's going to gain acceptance quickly. It's going to do all the things that we needed to do. I'm not seeing anything like that in any of them yet.
Right. No, it's still so early. Early. Yeah, I completely agree.
And how long is it going to take? I don't know.
You know what? I get frustrated because I look back. I mean, I move really quickly just in life. This technology has been around for 10, 11 years now. And, look at what it's achieved, but look at what it hasn't achieved yet too. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. Sometimes the skeptic in me goes, you think it'd be more established. If this is as powerful as everyone believes that it is, and I do, you think it would have gotten adoption faster. It would be more mainstream now. And I'm not sure that I would have gone kind of this consumer route with it. If I were running this whole space, which nobody is, but I'm not sure I would have sold Bitcoin to consumers. I probably would have gone institutional with the whole thing, gone to hospitals for medical billing tracking and governments for tracking votes, right? How wonderful would that be, right? And I'm not sure I would have gone to selling tokens it confuses things when you're selling to the guy on the street through a Coinbase app. That's part of where most of the skepticism comes from right now is because we're trying to protect the guy from being destroyed by this space because it's a real threat.
There's another piece here, and you kind of cued it in my mind when you talked about recording votes there. I'm thinking back to a few moments ago when we made reference to medical records. Yes. So one of the key chains yeah, there's a twister right there. One of the key concepts involved with blockchain is the idea that the data within blockchain is visible. It's not hidden.
Yes.
And that becomes rather problematic where something like medical records are concerned, because medical records, you want them to be private. Now, I'm not saying it's impossible to resolve that issue, but on the surface, that's a fairly significant issue.
Mm-hmm. Right. So whether you have your medical records on the blockchain, but you don't make them visible to everyone. You only make them visible to who you wish to make them visible. That's the trick, right?
Well, it also becomes more than that, because once you make it visible to somebody, how do you prevent them from making it visible to somebody else?
This is true. This is all stuff that we figured out. Is way beyond my pay grade. I mean, one of the things that I really found heartening in this whole space, whether we're talking about currencies or the blockchain or anything, was when I saw all of the young, seemingly very smart computer programmers at these conferences walking around, and all of the time, energy, and brain power going into building out this space. If you have to acknowledge that there's something happening here. There's something's going to come out of it. I don't know what it is, but I'm just hoping we find the investable angle on the way there.
I have no doubt that you're going to find the investable angle. That's what you specialize in. So if you didn't find it, I think there was something wrong, actually.
Right. So there's also, I've got risk averse. I'm dealing with other people's money, right? So I can't just go and buy the 2000th ranked token because it's going to ICO, it's way, it's only got a $15 million market cap or total value lock or whatever you want to look at. That's way too risky. So we tend to stay, going beyond Bitcoin and Ethereum, even into a Polygon or a Chainlink or a Decentraland or any of these other top tokens is even too scary for some of our clients, right? Sure. You're just talking gibberish at that point. It sounds like you're talking some video game language, which
is not so far from the truth, by the way.
Not Infinity and Decentraland are video games, right? So,
yeah.
So Sandbox.
You also mentioned voting too. That's another one that I see as being problematic. because
Yeah,
once again, people want their votes to be private. But once it's private, then how do you know that the voting is accurate?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Kind of a catch-22, right?
It really is. Yeah. And the thing I like to point out to people is anything that one computer programmer can program, another one can find a way around.
Right.
That's just the nature of computer programming. I mean, I can literally, any first year programmer can make any computer say 2 + 2 = 5. It's not difficult. It's 2 minutes worth of coding. It's very, very simple to do. So clearly you can make a computer do or say anything you want it to do. And that to me, I think is really my ultimate source of skepticism, saying that the computer is going to solve a problem for us. Computers don't solve problems. Computers enable us to solve problems, but computers themselves do not solve a single problem.
Yep. And you know what's interesting is my older clients completely jive with what you just said. They have an innate fear, or maybe a healthy fear in this case, of what all of this brings. And they also know the limitations of it as a tool. Because I'm old enough to remember the life before the internet and before cell phones. So I've seen what technological changes can bring, and some of them are good and some of them are not so good. So, being connected 24/7 has its downsides.
It's like any other tool. How do you use the tool? It's not whether the tool is good or not. Right. The only judgment of good where a tool is concerned is, does it work well? That's about the most furthest you can go with good or not good or bad, if you will. But a tool is going to be however you choose to use it. So I think the biggest flaw in the system is if we're going to rely on the tool to solve our problem, we're setting ourselves up for a problem right there. I think we have to figure out how we're going to solve problems ourselves. We can't expect computers to do the solving for us.
One of the big weaknesses is with how it's all set up right now is, self-custody, right? That's the strength and a weakness of this whole space. Because self-custody is dangerous when you get someone who doesn't spend the time to understand how it works and even people who use this all the time make mistakes and send stuff to the wrong wallets all the time. It's easy to do. You can send $100,000 to the wrong wallet and there's no tripwires. There's no safety in there. So that kind of
oops.
Right. Oops.
Well, there was was it Polygon or someone last fall sent a whole bunch of money to the wrong. There's another one a few months ago. These people who do it all day long are sending them to the wrong wallet addresses. That's a flaw, not a feature. Yeah. And I think that's got to be solved and solved quickly before the viability of this whole space really takes off.
It really does. It has to. It's a technology that has promise. It has lots of promise.
Promise. Yeah. I hope some of it.
It's just that we are a long way from achieving the promise. And in that sense, we're kind of like at the .com crash stage. Because at the .com crash stage, the internet had a lot of promise, but most of it was unfulfilled at that point. Now much more of it has been fulfilled. There's still a great deal more that is not yet fulfilled, but we have some fleshing out that has happened. That hasn't happened in the crypto world yet. It's just beginning. So again, that's another reason for being skeptical, at least in the short to medium term, about it becoming a currency. It is fascinating to see what is going to happen with how do we use these interesting storage mechanisms, because that's really a fabulous side of the whole blockchain concept. And as one of my recent guests pointed out, there is a currency argument to be made that I actually do support, and that is some of these currencies can be useful in certain circumstances in countries that have horrific monetary systems.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. As an alternate, absolutely.
Yeah. And in that case, that does make some sense. That actually makes a great deal of sense. I think to me, the more interesting part is even in those countries, it still hasn't taken hold yet. And I'm wondering why.
Right. So, I have a different argument too against sort of skeptical about currencies. I think that when you get a company, say take Amazon, for example, say they built a blockchain to track their packages, right? It's perfect for that, right?
Sure.
Well, if it's an internal blockchain like IBM has or all these other companies have, what do they need a currency for? There's no need for a currency because your nodes are internal that are checking it, so there's no one to pay. They're not trying to raise money. They're not trying to trick anybody. So what's the currency for? So the whole and the idea of this, what if someone launches a new chain today that does something special, helps you track the songs you listen to or something, something consumer facing. Why does every blockchain have to have its own currency? Why can't they just say, hey, we're just going to use our venture capital money we raised to, use Matic as the currency or some other token, Ethereum, ETH, as our currency. Why does every blockchain have, it seems like, to me, I question why 90% of these chains have their own currencies. They're silliness. I mean, to me, they should be using established currency. That's why I think there's going to be centralization, and a lot of this discussion is going to be kind of moot in 10 years, because I think this is just a lot of it's silliness and people trying to get rich quick, frankly.
That's exactly where it is, I think. Now, I want to throw a speculation out there, and it's going to be a speculation without any foundation whatsoever. Because
no, I love those. Let's go. That's fine.
Literally, I have no foundation. None.
Yeah.
But I actually blurted this out on the regular LOA Today podcast one day about 2 or 3 months ago, and I don't even know where it came from. I mean, I like to say it just came from inside or from God or from source energy or whatever.
Inspiration.
It was just pure inspiration. But I blurted out, in 10 years, we're going to think about currency entirely differently. I don't know exactly how. I don't know exactly why. But what we think about money and currency now is going to be completely and totally different. We're going to feel different about it. We're going to treat it differently. It's going to have a different role in our lives.
Interesting. So
I can't tell you why I think that. That's what's so scary about it.
If you look at the last 20 years, I mean, when's the last time you used cash? I haven't touched cash in forever. To me, like, especially after COVID, why do you want to handle money that's been passed around, right? I don't, right? So that is a massive shift from 20, 30 years ago, right? So to say there's another one coming in over the next 20, 30 years is not a huge jump, actually. I don't have a problem with anything you said there.
Okay. Do you have any idea how it's going to play out? Because I really don't have a clear idea how it's going to play out.
Maybe currency goes global and we don't have 500 of them anymore. We have one or maybe two.
And maybe the current currency that we're using today fails and trips that wire.
Yep. I mean, you drop $5 trillion onto an economy and then you have rampant inflation, and tends to people lose faith in it.
Yeah.
Which is going back to the original libertarian argument. That's why they created the Bitcoin in the first place, or backed the Bitcoin in the first place. They figure, everybody's going to need to rush to it. So.
Satoshi's not wrong. He's not wrong. Or he or she or they or whoever it is, they're not wrong.
Well, and if you look at some of the things that have been published about the digital dollar and the reasons why they want big governments want to bring this in and all of that, one of the things that I see repeating is this ability to control the currency and not necessarily where it's going, but the speed. So if they, want to get more people spending, they can put an incentive in. So you got to spend your cash, or if they want to slow that down or whatever, they have more control over that. And I think that's scary. But that's just me.
And why do you think it's scary? Elaborate on that just a little bit. Why is that scary?
Well, I think the government having the ability to stop and start your bank account based on what they think is good, after the last 2 years, especially in the country that I live in, Canada, I don't trust them to control how I spend my money or how quickly I spend it.
Right. They're human beings just like us, and their desires and goals may be different than yours. I'm trying to be very apolitical, but they have different desires than you do, right?
Right.
And they may end up serving their desires and not yours. They have control. So I don't have a problem with what you're saying at all.
We don't know how to address it though. But
No,
if I was to guess to the I guess chain of events, I would say that to go further to what, that inspiration that you had, if I was to sit with this, cause I've had the same inspiration that things are going to be vastly different in, the next decade or so, maybe a little bit sooner. I don't know, maybe a little bit further out, but I would say that there's this period of possibly like hyperinflation, and then the currency fails. There's a new one that's rolled out. Maybe that's the digital dollar, things like that. And then there's unrest and other things that come up at the time. But I think that those things are going to play into how our view of currency changes, like you were saying, Walt.
And yet I also have skepticism about the scenario. I know that scenario really well. I thought about that one for decades. Yeah. I really did. I spent a lot of time on that one. And I have doubts about it now, to be honest.
Oh, okay. I'd love to hear it.
The reason I have doubts is because of 2008. Okay. 2008 was supposed to be the watershed moment. In libertarian circles, everybody was looking to, okay, this is it. This is when the whole thing's when the spam's going to hit the fan and everything's going to fall apart and they're going to rush to gold and whatever else. And none of it happened. In fact, it was exactly the diametric opposite of that. The markets, instead of punishing the Fed and the Bank of England and the European Bank and all that rewarded them. They not only did they not punish any of the activities, they said, yeah, we're in favor of that. We're in favor of reducing purchasing power because it saves the existing system. We love that.
Oh yeah.
That was not supposed to happen.
Yeah. The Fed is all for it.
Not just the Fed, the markets, the broad markets, the bond market, the stock market, the currency market. I mean, they were all totally in favor of it. They loved it.
So what's the libertarian view on what's happening now with inflation? Is it transitory? Is it permanent? What are people excited about it because it's the beginning of the end? What's the take?
I'm actually the wrong person to ask because I no longer consider myself libertarian. I left that back behind back in 2008. I was one of the few who said 2008 is a flag, guys. Pay attention. This is telling us that this theory we've all been advocating actually doesn't play out the way we think it does. We need to learn from this. And all the rest of them refused to learn from it. I said, okay, I'm going my own way. So I really can't tell you what's going on in libertarian circles now. Yeah. But what I can tell you is that this has been fascinating. This has been great. I've been loving this conversation. So Richard, first of all, thank you for coming onto the program and sharing your expertise and your perspective on this and for helping to muddy the waters because these are great waters to muddy.
Aren't they? Yeah.
And Jody, thank you for agreeing to join me as my co-host here on these Crypto Skeptic segments. So not only do we get to do the Wednesday shows, we get to do these too. This is great.
This is awesome. I just like learning and asking a lot of questions because until you start asking some questions, you're never going to know the answer.
So true.
And I mean, maybe there is no answer at this point or one hasn't become clear, but I feel conversations like this get us closer.
And they help us all think about it too. They help us understand and learn and ask, not only ask the questions, but kind of ask ourselves, what are the answers to the questions? Because really that's what it comes down to. What are the answers?
Yeah. I appreciate you guys have great energy. I really enjoyed this. This is fun. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure for us as well. So thank you, Richard. Thank you, Jody Lynn. Thank you, listeners. And we'll see you all next time. Take care, everybody.